They don't call it March Madness for nothing. Welcome to this Top 10, and today I will be counting down the top 10 upsets in NCAA tournament history. For this list, I am basing my rankings on how likely it was for the team that ended up winning to win before the game took place. The lower their odds were and the bigger the game, the higher they will be on this list. Number 10. 15th seeded Hampton defeats 2nd seeded Iowa State in the 2001 first round 58-57. On March 15, 2001, the Iowa State Cyclones walked into the Arrowhead Pond, now known as the Honda Center, in Anaheim, California, expecting an easy victory over the 15th seeded Hampton Pirates. They were likely already considering who they would be playing in the second round. However, at halftime, they were down 31-27. This was shocking, but many people thought that Iowa State would take charge in the second half and walk away with the victory. However, that did not happen, and when the final buzzer sounded, Hampton had defeated Iowa State 58-57. Number 9. 15th seeded Norfolk State defeats 2nd seeded Missouri in the 2012 first round 86-84. Coming into the game, Missouri had a great record of 30-5. On the other hand, the Norfolk State Spartans were 26-10 and competed in the MEAC, a conference many people had never even heard of. Likewise, the same could be said about the team itself. However, the team went out on the court and shocked the world when they defeated the Missouri Tigers by the final score of 86-84. They did not make it past the second round, but making it there over Missouri was a major victory in itself. Number 8. 13th seeded Princeton defeats 4th seeded UCLA in the 1996 first round 43-41. In 1995, the UCLA Bruins won the entire tournament and were national champions. A year later, they were given a 4th seed and were still regarded as one of the elite basketball teams in the nation. Princeton, on the other hand, was not known for its basketball and were thought of as major underdogs. Nobody expected what happened when the team stepped out on the court. In a very low-scoring game, the Bruins were up at halftime, but only by the score of 19-18. However, in the second half, the Tigers of Princeton simply outplayed the Bruins and won by the final score of 43-41. In 1995, UCLA were national champions. A year later, they were out in the first round after a loss to Princeton. Number 7. 15th seeded Santa Clara defeats 2nd seeded Arizona in the 1993 first round 64-61. In 1993, Arizona was one of the best teams in the country, and Santa Clara was very little known. Arizona was expected to handle them easily, and at halftime, it looked like Arizona would do just that, holding a 13-point lead at the break. However, Santa Clara, led by a young Canadian point guard, Steve Nash, who we now know as one of the greater players to ever play in the NBA, mounted an improbable comeback. Once the buzzer sounded, Santa Clara had shocked Arizona by a final score of 64-61. Number 6. 15th seeded Richmond defeats 2nd seeded Syracuse in the 1991 first round 73-69. Going into the game, there was no doubt the highly talented Syracuse would take care of Richmond, and odds are have an easy time doing it as well. I mean, of course, up to that point, the 15th seed had never defeated the 2nd seed. No one could have seen what happened when the game tipped off. By halftime, the Richmond Spiders were already winning by the score of 44-36. The game became a little closer in the second half, but the final score still stood as 73-69 Richmond. The Syracuse players were livid and the Richmond players were ecstatic. They had just made history. However, someone should have seen this coming, because Richmond had played the part of Cinderella a few past times in the tournament. Number 5. 15th seeded Florida Gulf Coast defeats 2nd seeded Georgetown in the 2013 first round 78-68. Coming into the game, few people had ever heard of Florida Gulf Coast, and even fewer thought they had any chance over the great Georgetown team. However, when the game began, the Florida Gulf Coast players played with a different fire, knowing that they had nothing to lose. They decided to go out on the court and simply have fun, and they showed it with multiple emphatic dunks that made you take a step back. At the end, the score was 78-68 with Florida Gulf Coast moving on, and the game was not even that close. Number 4. 11th seeded LSU defeats 1st seeded Kentucky in the 1986 Elite Eight 59-57. LSU had a difficult 1986 season. During the course of the season, they lost multiple players to injury and had to overcome that, which they did. They also did not have a great chance of making it very far in the tournament at all, and had to make a couple upsets just to make it to the Elite Eight. However, when they did, they were given almost no chance to defeat the elite team of Kentucky. However, they did defeat the Wildcats by a final score of 59-57 and were moving on to the Final Four. Everyone was shocked, but the LSU Tigers were overjoyed. Number 3. Second-seeded Duke defeats first-seeded UNLV in the 1991 Final Four 79-77. On paper, this score would not look like a major upset at all. Second seeds defeating first seeds is not that uncommon. However, at the time of the game, UNLV had a perfect 34-0 record on the season and in total had won 45 straight games. They were on fire. Everybody expected that, despite the talent that Duke had, UNLV would defeat them like they had everyone else over their crazy winning streak. However, Duke clearly showed that they were not going to lay down for them and stayed close with them the entire game. In the end, Duke ended up winning by the final score of 79-77. UNLV's 45-game winning streak was over, and Duke was moving on to the championship game. Number 2. Sixth-seeded North Carolina State defeats first-seeded Houston in the 1983 championship game 54-52. Coming into 1983, the North Carolina State team and their head coach, Jim Valvano, felt very confident that they would have a highly successful season. However, their regular season wasn't anything special, and the highest they got in the polls was 15th. However, their postseason was a different story entirely. They won a couple of upsets on their way to the championship game. However, Houston, led by NBA legend Hakeem Olajuwon, stood in their way, with a good chance of stopping them. The game was tight the entire way through, and then it came down to the very end. However, North Carolina State won with a buzzer beater to win the NCAA championship. Before I reveal my top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. 15th-seeded Lehigh defeats 2nd-seeded Duke in the 2012 first round 75-70. 15th-seeded Coppin State defeats 2nd-seeded South Carolina in the 1997 first round 78-65. 14th-seeded Old Dominion defeats 3rd-seeded Villanova in the 1995 first round 89-81. 1. 8th-seeded Villanova defeats 1st-seeded Georgetown in the 1985 championship game 66-64. Villanova had to win several upsets just to get into this game, and when they did, they were given almost no chance against the elite Georgetown team. However, they didn't listen to any of that. They focused on nothing but going out on that court, defeating Georgetown, and winning the national championship. And that is exactly what they did. They defeated Georgetown in the huge upset by the final score of 66-64. They were the lowest seed to ever win the entire tournament, a record that still stands true today. Do you agree with my list? What do you think is the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history? If you enjoyed this top 10 and would like to see more sport top 10s, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Sports Top 10s. Also, if you have any suggestions, go ahead and leave that in the comments. Thanks for watching.